The Delivery.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Delivery. So let me begin by saying this. It's a pandemic. Let me say this again. It's a pandemic. I feel like I got to say that to folks all the time to answer questions about why we shouldn't do certain things, why we should take certain approaches to whatever we're doing, because we're in a pandemic. So when I'm thinking about college football, this is what I'm thinking about. So let me get in my bag and let me talk about college football. Now, there's a number of reasons why we should be thinking different about college football. And I think the Ivy League, who kind of led us away at the beginning of the shutdown of college sports, Ivy League, if you remember, I think was the first tournament to cancel at the beginning. And now recently, the Ivy League announced that it will be moving its football season to the spring. Now, those of you who have maybe been following me on the Real Sports Guys, RSG, Waves, looking at some of our other shows, or follow me on Twitter. You can get me at RSG D Wills. You can check me out there, but you probably hear me when I've been talking about the importance of moving football to the spring for a number of reasons. And the Ivy League, I think, is leading the way for us to understand why that's important. But let me give you a couple of reasons why I think this is important. First of all, by moving football to the spring, you're aligning your strategy with science and not politics. Everything we know, at least by what we're hearing in timelines, for any possibility of a vaccine or to be in a much safer place around infrastructure and everything else, tells us that we're going to be looking to the spring for anything that looks like we might move into a space that we can start to really settle in on some way of life that can move us back to some sense of normalcy. So you're aligning with the science, not the politics. By doing that, you are also putting the athletes and the student athletes first. Now think about this. We've already had several cases of athletes. I mean, Clemson had 35 people? A number of teams. You have some teams that have already shut down their summer workouts because of the level of the number of student athletes football players who tested positive as well. You're talking about doing this in an environment with 18 to 22-year-olds for the most part who are not in a bubble. And when all their classmates come back to campus, as much as these universities are trying to put protocols in place, put testing in place, these environments, students are going to be moving in and out of these environments. So they're exposed. There's no control with that as well. And so you have too many factors, but by doing this, you're putting the students first, and you're giving yourself a planning horizon that's going to allow for you to put together the best scenario you can. The other thing is, in the spring, it's your best opportunity to possibly have fans in the stadium watch the games in a safe environment, right? If there are vaccines, and yes, there's got a whole bunch of steps about how you do it, who's going to choose to do it. We can argue about it. But having a vaccine available, whether only 80% of the populace decides to get a vaccine or not, that is not that's something you can deal with, but it's 80% will choose to do it. There's a number of issues with that, but you at least know what they are, as well as the testing infrastructure by then is much stronger in terms of your ability to trace on these campuses. They have perfected their ability to trace and identify. They will understand better what the hotspots look like. There's so much more infrastructure in place where campuses have been able to really trial and error and figure out if their protocols are working as they're then beginning to pivot to the spring. But even if you don't get all that, the other thing is the financial model for college football, the revenue pie, I think people are discovering, is driven by Fans. And so, people talk about all these big TV deals, but when the money really trickles down to the per institution breakdown, you still need revenue and institutional funds to support it. That's one of the reasons why you're seeing some of these other sports cut. They're not cutting football, not in most of these institutions. They end up cutting other sports, and in some ways, some of our Title IX sports. But if you look at that, the fiscal year for most of these institutions is June 30th. So if you have the ability to still generate revenue within the confines of that fiscal year, which the spring gives you, with an opportunity to put fans in and plan that out safely, you're going to be, but let's take it from a fan perspective. It'll be extravaganza. You could have college basketball, football. I mean, it'll be OD, but the energy on some of these campuses with number one of these opportunities to be at football games and basketball games and spreading out and getting people connected could be a great opportunity, but you at least get to plan for that, how you want to lay it out. Maybe there's a complement that you have between college basketball and football. There's a way you can try to get that energy going. But it definitely allows you to do it. Now, if the Ivy League is showing us the way, and by all accounts, some of our best institutions in the country, some of our brightest people exist in Ivy League, as well as other places in the country, as well as institutions like Michigan and Wisconsin, Duke, and all of this place. We have great faculty, bright folks, but they all know, if they're looking at the science, that the spring is your best option. The spring is your best option because it's a pandemic. That means we are spiking at a level where the EU is not even letting U.S. citizens travel to the EU. We have, the EU has fewer cases than the state of Arizona now on a daily basis. And we're going to have these young people traveling all over these hotspots. Many of our top programs exist in these, some of these states that are spiking. We can't put these young folks in this place. But if we just make decisions now, this is where leadership comes in. This is where not having a czar or having a coordinating space for college football gets us in trouble. But deep down in our hearts, we know that we should be planning to play this game in the spring. So in closing, just my thoughts section. I got a post that I thought that really spoke to this, and bear with me. When I wear a mask in public, or decline an invitation to a party, or to come inside, I want you to know that I'm educated enough to know that I could be asymptomatic and still give you the virus. No, I don't live in fear of the virus. I just want to be part of the solution, not the problem. I don't feel like the government is controlling me. I feel like I'm a contributing adult to society, and I want to teach others the same. The world doesn't revolve around me. It's not all about me and my comfort. If we all could live with other people's consideration in mind, this whole world would be a much better place. Wearing a mask doesn't make me weak, scared, stupid, or even controlled. It makes me considerate. When you think about how you look, how uncomfortable it is, or what others think of you, just imagine someone close to you, a child, a father, a mother, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a student athlete, choking on a respirator alone without you, and any family members allowed at bedside. Ask yourself if you could have sucked it up a little for them. A little bit longer to the spring. Just my thoughts.
The Delivery.